The meeting of the Transportation Committee is about to begin. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and to my left I have Alderwoman Rhonda Pindell Charles. To my right I have Alderman Savage, myself. So we have quorum. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda as written?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. We have minutes from our 11/13/24 regular meeting. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Great. Next up on our agenda, we have ID 11/24 Transportation Board update, and it does not appear that we have a Transportation Board member. So we will table that if they happen to come in. So we'll move along to ID 10/24, which is our Transportation Department update with Director Marcus Moore. Thank you for coming out in the rain.
For having me. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Transportation Committee.
Good afternoon.
Chairwoman. Marcus Moore, Director of Transportation Parking. I'd like to give you a little update on what's going on in our agency, as well as our parking contractors have presentations to give. One notable thing that we were pretty excited about is we'll be taking delivery of our 2 electric buses soon. Like this month soon. And these are our very first. We have electric vehicles in the city, but these are our very first buses. They'll be a part of our fleet. It is a part of our whole plan to, the replacement plan when you look at the schedule. We just also got confirmation from MTA, to piggyback on the Georgia State contract for 2 more buses, the smaller ones like our cutaways. They're like 9 passenger. They will be a little bit longer in coming. But to give you a little bit of the statistics, I have some information to share with you. But these buses are like our larger buses, 30 feet long. They seat 22 passengers, and there's room for, they're ADA accessible. Driving range is about 158 miles without AC, using the HVAC. Fast charging is about 2 hours. And the curb weight is just under 24,000 pounds. And to give you a reference point, our larger bus is 26,000. So anything over 26,000 pounds requires a CDL with air brakes. Anything less than that doesn't. And with passenger seating, anything above 16 passengers, including the driver, requires a CDL with a P endorsement. So the next set of buses that will be coming won't require a CDL, and it won't be as heavy as well. So that'll help us with hiring. One of the things you'll note that these buses were ordered in December of 2022. So you can see how long it takes to get them. Some companies have dropped out since then, problems they had like Patera and all. But the start to finish time has been about 18 months. These did take us about 2 years. So I have some information I'll hand out to you regarding that, once I finish this presentation here. Micromobility, our on-demand, is holding strong, steady ridership, which is the combined orange and purple that we started in July, and we ran them in sync with the actual routes that were being piloted to remove. So October of 2023, the orange and purple combined carried about 2,240 people, riders. And the on-demand in October of the same year carried 2,300, which is just 58 more. But November, we saw a bigger difference. November, the combined orange and purple was just over 2,000. And this November, for our combined micro-mobility, was 335. And it goes to wonder, like, okay, October has 31 days. November, we actually have a holiday that we didn't even operate one, which was Thanksgiving, but you can see the ridership. So we'll be able to give you trends later on as we go through of how that's actually working out, the ridership days. We can break it down a little bit more. KFH, our transportation planners that presented last month, they remain on track as they described to us last month with the transit development plan. They're very hopeful that they'll have a completed project to present to the whole council probably sometime in February, mid to late February, definitely before we start our whole budget process, because there are recommendations that you might want to take on that may actually cost, maybe a service enhancement, but it may be a cost associated with it. So we can also see these updates on our website under transportation. There is a section just for the CDP. Hello? Mr. Abraham is going to just hand you so you have a hard copy of what I talked about. It shows the pictures of the three council. It has more statistics on the the bus that we're going to be getting. Like I mentioned, we're getting 2 of them, and when they come in, we'll most likely be having a press conference later on. Infrastructure improvements are still underway. You need another one? Infrastructure improvements are still underway with BGE and our subcontractor, but in that interim, we'll have a portable charger. So those are pretty exciting things that were happening right now. Before we move on to more on our parking contractors, is there anything specifically you'd like to revisit of what we talked about here or before with me?
I don't think so, but before we move on to the parking contractors, I'm going to go back to the Transportation Board's report.
Come on.
Did anybody else have questions for Marcus? Yeah. So we're going to do that report, and then we'll come back
Okay.
to the contractors.
Okay.
Thank you so much. I'm Kurt Riegel, Chairman of the Annapolis Transportation Board. It's rainy out there. Sorry for being late.
That's all right.
I have very little to tell you about. First of all, I just want to accent a thought that was given by Alderman Savage in the last City Council meeting, and that is that transportation is at the root of many of our environmental challenges. And how we do transportation is going to have a tremendous leverage effect on overall environmental performance for the city and the region. The second item that I wanted to mention is that we have a chronic shortage of about 4 members on the Transportation Board. If you have any ideas on how to electrify replacement of those people who left some years ago, that would be fine. 1 member basically does not participate and should be replaced. So we have that chronic 4-member deficit that I would like to fill somehow. And then finally, I just wanted to relate very quickly my own personal experiences with the Hillman Garage. I have finally, late, mastered the systems in operation at both parking garage systems. And the one that is operated by 3 garages seems to work pretty well. The Hillman Garage is quite difficult, and I continue to hear from many people of difficulties in using the Hillman system and in fear of using the Hillman system because of the jeopardy that they perceive for fines and other unpleasant consequences of parking there. It seems that the Hillman Garage is being treated just like parking meters on the street. And in my view, that is not appropriate. The contractor is very focused on enforcement, as if every space in the Hillman Garage were a parking meter, but it isn't. Parking meters require manual entry of some data in order to start the parking session. Whereas Hillman Garage is highly motivated with all of the equipment that is necessary to record entry and departure of a vehicle, to identify that vehicle, to link to financial accounts that might be associated with that vehicle, and to credit that vehicle with the 2-hour free parking allowance when it is appropriate. What is missing is apparently a will by the contractor to make such modifications to the software system as would enable it to do what it can do. And I am of the strong opinion that the city would benefit greatly, and in fact, the garage would benefit greatly by encouraging further use by eliminating these barriers that presently exist. It ought to be possible to drive into a garage, perform no manual action because you have previously set up an account for your car, and then depart from the garage without ever having pushed a button or entered a code or done anything. And I really encourage you to, I mean, there's only so much you can do on the city council because your functions are essentially legislative. But to the extent that you can push on the administration to push harder on its contractors, I think we would all be well ahead.
Thank you, Craig. I will say, stick around because next up on our agenda is a discussion with our 2 parking contractors about all of those things.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
One other note, Marcus Moore, Director of Transportation. To note in your packet, the last page, you can kind of see the breakdown of the procurement of the 2 battery electric buses. And you can see financing for bus number 1 was 100% MTA capital. So you can see the breakdown for number 2, how that breaks down for us, the city share, or 26%, how much that cost and what was the total cost of each of those buses there. And remember, we talked about the bus specification, BYD, is still in business. That is mainly doing school buses, so the subset or subcontractor with that, or their sister company is RIDE, is the manufacturer out in Lancaster, California. So I want to just bring your attention to that there as well. At the next meeting, I'll be able to give you more information about the other 2 that are coming. They're replacing some of our cutaways that are coming down the pike. But it's a pretty exciting time for us to kind of, change that carbon footprint as we are. So,
Marcus, what's going to happen with the buses that they're replacing? Are we selling them off?
yeah, what happens along the way when they do, the larger buses like our Gilliks and those Eldorados, they're considered heavy duty. So they're 10-year or 350,000-mile buses. To give you an example, like a hybrid diesel that's on the state shuttle, 4311, that bus is 14 years old. And sometimes just changing a transmission and keeping it up to date, we can keep it a lot longer. And that is kind of a show bus. Hopefully that'll last until whenever. But generally speaking, the larger buses are to be used for that long. The smaller ones are 250,000 miles for about 7 years, and then they do get auctioned off on Gov Deals. And some of that money does come back to the city, but remember, if we have the 80-10-10 split, it's up to a threshold of like $5,000. After that, it goes back to the federal government. But we can keep that, and it goes into our fleet manager, Danny Hallworth's budget, and also will help offset some of the purchase of new buses. But that's generally, we've been able to keep them a lot longer than the expectations, which is really good. It shows that we're doing really well with our preventive maintenance program.
Great, thank you.
So what I'd like to do, yeah, sorry.
Thank you. So the FTA, is that federal?
Federal Transit Administration, yes.
And what exactly is the county grant? Who's that from? Is that from the county government or some other county organization?
That's a really good point. The county grant, they contribute, as you can see, $250,000. And because some of our buses, we go into the county because of the mall. So just helping and being a good neighbor there as well. And those, you'll probably ask later on, like, where will they go? They'll go all around. And then we'll have to figure out, they won't stay on one route. Because with the 158-mile range, it'll probably be on an AM or a PM, and then switch them around red, brown, green, and magenta shuttle as well. But we'll figure out the plan of how it works, but that's the county helping out the city, which is really being a good neighbor. We really appreciate that.
No, that's good. And I mean, because these big buses probably only need that much capacity during the morning or evening. if you have a smaller one, supplement in the middle of the day, and then this could charge in the meantime for the.
Yeah, absolutely, to be able to do that, and the smaller ones to be able to move around a bit. So we're most likely, at the beginning, having them on the go time as well, because right now, we're really looking at that range. And that's the biggest thing that hold us or hamper us. When you look at, bus specifications down, it says operating range without HVAC. So that, I don't know how much of a burn that will take away the mileage. And then, of course, topography, taking off on a hill and other things that will, when it's not regenerating power. So it'll be interesting. It's a learning process for all of us to upkeep and to maintain them, but we're excited that they're coming.
How many miles does a typical bus travel in Annapolis?
And I had that on my desk. I knew you would ask. So it's broken down like each of the routes, red, green, brown, orange, what it used to be. None of them are going more than about 180 or so for a whole day. So being able to break that down from we start out at 5:30 and change out at 12, or do 12 until 7, we should be able to make that 100 miles.
I see. Yeah.
So that's what we're thinking about, the break in the middle. It definitely wouldn't make a whole day, because, this is, the best case scenario, but as we test it out, we'll see what the deviation is, plus or minus 10%. Usually it's gonna be less. I don't think we're gonna get more than what they're saying here. But that's about what we're thinking.
What about, when are you gonna be able to get your DC charger? The fast charger?
It's actually here, working with Public Works, Donovan, our engineer. The subcontractors with BGE, I actually meet with them tomorrow. I'm not sure when they're breaking ground in the next few days or week, if it's going to be before Christmas. But it's going to take them every bit of 6 weeks to do that. But we do have a portable charger, like MTA does have. It's not a fast one, but it won't take a day. But it will, could take 4 hours, 5 hours. But that we bought as a backup just in case.
Yeah, I mean, you only need the fast charger for middle of the day charging, because a regular over level 2 probably be sufficient. Plug it in overnight. And
yeah, those two buses, the charger that we have is going to have two spigots, if you will, whatever so I can charge them both at the same time. And the intelligence of the charger, I'm not sure if when we start daisy chaining them together, which one goes and then it stops to go to the other one, or how that technology actually works. Doing two at once, is it both the same drain, or one, and then when that finishes, it goes to the other one. But we have one vehicle, and of course our smaller carts. So just having that kind of infrastructure there at our location is exciting in and of itself.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You indicated, Mr. Moore, that the buses go to the federal government once we're kind of done with them.
No, they go on Gov Deals to be sold on a government website.
Okay,
And we
okay.
get the funds up to $5,000.
Oh,
That
okay.
goes back to our kitty, because remember, when it's federally funded, they can get some of their money back, of that amount. So we can keep up to $5,000 plus whatever administrative costs, let's say $100 because we had to put the ad in or whatever else. So if we got, $18,000 for a bus, we're only going to get $5,000 from it, because they put out quite a bit of money as well. The federal government, in the best case scenario, is zero, like we did bus number 1, but it's usually a 8-10-10, 80% federal, 10% state, 10% local match. During COVID, state wasn't kicking in, so we had to drop back and figure out, now we got 20%, twice as much as we normally would be paying. And we did get a couple buses that were delayed during because of supply chain issues, but we were paying 20% when we normally pay 10. But at the same time, from the federal government, we got some other funding like CARES, ARPA, and other.
Okay.
So yeah, Daniel Hallworth, our fleet manager, will take the pictures and put the specs, and it goes on Gov Deals, and anybody can bid on them.
Okay, well, that's $5,000 we didn't have at first.
Exactly. It's not always 5. It's up to,
Well,
sometimes it's,
thereabouts.
exactly.
Okay.
So we can use that to go in the pot to purchase other.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what I'd like to do is first have Mr. John Kemp, our regional manager with SP Division of Metropolis, give us an update on their system, followed by Mr. Jason Parola, market president with Premium Parking. I can slide down one. plug in.
Know that I'm gonna have my automatically get in there. There you go.
Is this the slide deck that you forwarded to us, Marcus?
You got from Premium Parking, but not from SP Metropolis.
I can forward this afterward. It's just a couple of slides pertaining to data. Good afternoon. My name is John Kemp. I'm with Metropolis. Thanks for inviting us here to report out. So at this point, we have transitioned completely the God's Court Garage, Knighton Garage, and Park Place garages onto the Metropolis platform, and that's a vision. Internally, that's known as a vision system, meaning cameras read the plate as one enters, and depending on what type of parker they are, if they're a monthly parker, they'll exit without having to do anything. If they've come before to any of the garages or any garage on the Metropolis platform or any surface lot where Metropolis is deployed, and they've already set up their credit card and associated that with the vehicle they're driving, their experience will be like a monthly parker as well, where they enter, do nothing, they'll get a welcome text, and then exit whenever they wish. They'll get charged for the amount of time that they have spent in the garage, and within that session, they'll be able to apply a validation if they're going to an organization in town who, say, participates in Park, Shop, and Dine, or if they're a resident. So that leads me to some of the data we will talk about here today. I anticipate we'll be expanding the data set, as we go along month to month as we're invited here. So validations by type. So these are the entities providing validations in either God's Court Garage, Knighton Garage, or Park Place Garage. So there's 2 bed and breakfast participants, 30 entities validate for their employees at our garages. 42 organizations participate in Park, Shop, and Dine. And there's 14 organizations comp their visitors parking for however long that visit is, whether that's 2 hours all day, etc. And then so far we've got 364 residents who have engaged us and have a 2-hour validation that's able to be used in any of those 3 garages. And in the 45 days, of course, the few days around Thanksgiving are probably not very illustrative, but in that 45-day period, across those 3 locations, almost 600 uses of that validation. Length of stay. So this is another a question posed by the committee here. I was expecting to see exactly what we see here, and so you'll see the cluster of hopefully you can see the dark blue bar is the God's Court Garage, the green bar is the Knighton Garage, and the gold bar is Park Place. And the majority of use is in that 30-minute to 4-hour range. You'll see some of the taller bars in gold off to the end of the scale, the longer stays. And those are at Park Place and attributable to the fact that there's a hotel on property where you would naturally have longer stays. But this is pretty typical, and I appreciate you requesting this. I think this is data we want to maintain, keep up to date, and probably fold into our regular operating discussions that we have with the entire parking team, made up of members of this committee, Department of Transportation, City Manager's Office, et cetera, that go on every other week. Because I do think this is the type of data that can help spur conversations about appropriate rate structures and things of that nature. So this is not very surprising. This is very much what I would have expected to see. So that's the data I've got to share today. One of the other items I know of interest is just in general how transition has gone. We've really had very good experience. I think it's been very well received. There is an impact by the rollout. So not only have we rolled out the platform here in Annapolis, but at the same time, Baltimore and Washington, D.C. are also experiencing very aggressive rollouts of the Metropolis platform. And of course, so many of the visitors who come to Annapolis or from Annapolis go to Baltimore and Washington. There's a lot of cross-pollination there, which only helps. The real power in the experience is having gone through the process of setting up your, entering your credit card that first time and then never having to again. So we have at least several anecdotal examples of folks who come and were pleasantly surprised that it was simple.
Thank you.
And I think that's, largely due to the fact that that same growth that is going on in the nearby cities that are largely, that likely yield visitors to Annapolis. So,
Thank you. I have one question from a constituent, and that was, is there staff on site at Gotts Knighton and Park Place 24 hours?
not at all 24 hours. There is staff 24 hours, and they are armed with a phone, so they'll be able to get somewhere physically in the wee hours, the way overnight hours, where we're down to one. But we have somebody on site at all locations during all the busy ingress and egress periods. Yes, and they're able to take a credit card.
Okay.
And
So
also
if I
look up information really quickly. They're equipped with they're equipped with an iPad actually, and they can see comings and goings within the garage and answer questions.
And say I'm in Grott's garage, where would I find that person?
They should be circulating around, but when you've got a busy ingress, they should be going between the entrances and the exit. I mean, the entrances and the exits in this case are the same. Not all garages are configured that way, but here they are. But they should be near the high traffic customer touch points during the ingress and the egress. Other than that, they're circulating. They're doing facility inspections and performing other duties that are part of their role.
I had a constituent that reported that they felt it was an inequality issue, that they had somebody that had gone to a garage, no phone on their person,
Sure.
and actually no credit card. Hard to believe, I know, everybody
Yeah.
carries a credit card, but this particular person had no phone and no credit card, could not find anybody, and so just ended up parking and saying, I'm probably going to get a ticket somehow because I wasn't able to find anybody and I needed to park and go to this meeting or whatever that was
Sure.
they were going to. So,
I mean, a little more detail would be if I can get some more information on that. But I do think we have some mitigating processes in place for this exact sort of scenario.
so the phone number is in a very prominent place on all levels?
Yes, it's on the signage. We will make sure that it's ever more prominent if it's felt that, certainly wherever a customer exits the garage, there's only a few points through which they walk. So obviously that phone number should be quite obvious. That'd be the spot for them to be able to pull it up so they can get to their meeting and make the phone call at the same time.
All right. And then,
But we're able to accommodate that scenario.
great.
Yeah.
And the last time we met, we talked about the fact that Wi-Fi doesn't work on the bottom levels of many of the garages. Is there an emergency phone, or is there any thought towards moving towards something like that? Like, I'm just thinking about like walking across the college campus last week, and there's those blue phones everywhere.
Sure.
Is there something like that that could possibly be
Yes,
considered?
could possibly. Yep. We have considered the alternative, which is boosting the signal in those subterranean levels. It's extremely expensive. So yeah, we can recharge our look at the emergency phone concept. Sure.
If it's less expensive, I would say go
For
that
sure.
direction.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there questions from my colleagues? No questions. Alderman Savage?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, so as far as I'm glad to hear that you've done the gateless transition. Sounds like it's going smooth, it has gone smoothly. Used them a couple times myself now. So one of the questions I've asked before, I think, was how we treat, you still require residents to put in a code, right? If they go to a restaurant or if they just live, if they want the resident discount period, do they have to enter in a code?
They have their own QR code that is unique to them. So yeah, they would need to scan it. So they would pull in, they would get that text, welcome Alderman Savage.
Yeah.
You could then go from that prompt and there should be an obvious button right there to validate. And there you would scan the QR that you'd have in your car in that case. If you were going to a business that's validating through the Park Shop and Dine program, it's up to that business to manage how they display that QR or how they distribute that QR to the customer base.
Yeah. Well, so have you looked into just making that automatic based on the cameras? Have you looked into making that automatic? Because when people register, you have their plates, their residence, you know where they live, if they're in the cities or not, limits or not.
Yes, it is being looked into. Okay. Absolutely. There are other I'm optimistic because seems like there could be a significant use case in New York City, which helps move the development ball, if you will. And so I know we've had a few phone calls on that internally, and I'll continue to monitor that and push it along and report back here. But I know there's more than one case beyond Annapolis that seeks that solution.
Yeah. And I mean, I know it probably is going to mean a loss of revenue to a certain degree. But, we may want to consider, is honest, I mean, it doesn't affect my ward, but to be honest,
Does affect your ward.
well, the visitors, I suppose it does. Yeah.
Yes.
I suppose it does. But I'm not a huge fan of offering 2 hours of free parking. I'd almost rather just have a reduced rate for residents, or maybe give their first hour free for or first half hour for those quick pickup drop off. But because again, I want to over time encourage them to use other modes of transportation, and to offer them free parking in the garage is essentially a huge subsidy on the city's part for car operation.
It is a generous program.
Yeah. So anyway, I'll put a pin in that one for the time being, but
Yeah.
thanks. Thank you.
You're good? Monty, you're good?
Madam
No
Chair,
questions, thank you.
one other point I'd like to make about the cell phone coverage. That is something we, the city, are trying to look into as well. It is a big problem with Park Place, number one. Obviously, Hillman each level's open. Somewhat of a problem in Knighton, maybe the bottom level, and Gott's the bottom level? The very bottom. So our biggest problem, because the thing is, if you put a phone here, if it was just 20 feet this way, it would have helped that person. So how many phones can we do? But the biggest thing that we could do, looking at the repeater, it is the most expensive way. But 2 levels underground, we'll need to really look through that over time to see what we can do with our partners, the other owners there with Guardian. So it's something we may want to talk about a little bit more in detail.
And are there cameras in the garage on all levels?
No.
No, there aren't cameras on different levels. There are cameras. I shouldn't say that. Security cameras. Yeah, just the entrance and exit. There are a smattering, if you will, of other cameras, but they don't permeate all areas of, particularly in Park Place, where it's pretty vast down there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a cautionary note. We want to be careful what information we put out if we are lacking in cell phone coverage as well as cameras when it comes to public safety.
Sure. Of course.
The sooner the better.
You're right.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. We're going to have Mr. Jason Parola from Premium Parking. He's going to come with a presentation for us. Is he going to go to sleep?
Yeah, it is. I'll grab my computer.
Okay.
Yes, I'm gonna go down there.
Oh, remember the password? Do you know one second?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jason Prola, Market President for Premium Parking. 20 slides, I believe, today. It's been a while since we've been here, so we have a lot of updates, some large, some small. First, I'd like to give an update from Amber Infrastructure. They were trying to attend today and had a lapse or a crossover with a conference they're at. They'll be attending sometime in the first quarter, I believe, of 2025, they hope. But they had some information they wanted to share with you. So overall, the project has outperformed through fiscal year 2024, which was ending in June of 2024. The outperformance we broke out in a few different layers. Construction outperformance, substantial completion, which is the garage opening, was 6 weeks early in June of 2023 on the 13th. And then the Hillman Garage won the 2024 IPMI Apex Award for Architectural Design, which is a fairly distinguished award to win each year for new facilities that are built. On the operational outperformance, the deal model that was used to model the concession agreement outperformed on a basis of parking volumes, revenues, OpEx, facility major, maintenance, operating cash flow. There's some other pieces like debt service and things like that as well that did outperform. And then the results of the outperformance. So the city has thus far received more distributions and revenue share than anticipated. And also in July, a $2.4 million escrow was released to the city versus the January base case scenario that was built into the deal. And then on that, from there operationally, some updates we have for you. We did have an Annapolis night market on November 1st that went very well. We worked closely with Eric to make that happen. Very nice event, people attended it well, and it was a really smooth experience for everybody, minus chasing a couple cars out that parked in the lower level that morning. And we did have the boat show since then as well, since the last time we met. It went well and was, I think, a success all across. The volumes for parkers were up over the prior year as well. For holiday parking right now, we do have the downtown metered spaces set for the first 2 hours to be free. And then the Hillman Garage has the first hour free in place through January 1st. And that's live both within the Park Mobile platform and the Glide Parks platform to accommodate those rates. Since we last met, we've received 2 secret shops. In October, we had a 96.7. November, we had a 100. The October was interesting. The person who did the shop sort of took their own lens of how the shops are structured and what they should do to test everything. And they actually chose to not make a payment, leave the garage, get a citation, and then report that in the shop, which was outside of the guidelines they sort of have. But it worked, so we ended up having to void that for them, but also got the feedback. And so that really would have been 100, but it is a 96.7. And then this is just the trend of those shops since December of last year, so 12 months rolling, and how we've looked since we started them. The Park Shop and Dine, we had a request for some information on that. Right now, the participants at Hillman are the Mills Fine Wine and Spirits Store, Hats in the Belfry, Long and Foster Real Estate, Josh Sushi and Cafe, and then the Masonic Temple next door to the garage uses them as well. And so in 2023, there were 200 codes issued. In 2024, so far year to date, we have just over 900. I believe it was 904 was the number so far. And then to highlight something that's available at Hillman, and this has always been the case, and I don't think it's been talked about enough. When you do go to use the Hillman Garage, you scan a sign, you can text, all of those different things. If you're in the app or on the website through the lightweight website URL that will pull up when you scan it and don't have the app installed, you'll see on the far left there is a not sure how long pay as you go. So that's called what we call a start-stop session, and that has been in place since June of 2023. But I just wanted to highlight that that is there. What happens when you choose that option is you go to the second screen that tells you how the start-stop function will work, and then the third screen you will pick how often you want reminded that you're parking while your session is still open. And then from there you can make a payment. When you stop your session and leave, it will charge you when you end the session. And then I think this is the big one in the room. We had a nice conversation about the last time we were here, the technology requests, specifically the $50 overstays for residents. As discussed last time, that is outlined in city code. And as the gentleman prior mentioned, the garage does run as if it's an on-street location. That was part of how it was modeled when it was put out to bid and built. So we do treat that and use the on-street code for the citations and how that's enforced. Now, in 2025, and I can't say when, I think it's going to be earlier than later in 2025, there is a municipal rollout in our platform that will allow us to apply some additional logic on the back end of our enforcement mechanisms. When that happens, it should provide us the ability to also look in that logic at whether or not somebody is part of a group. And in this case, the group would be a 4903 or 4905 resident in our end. To you, it's District 1 and 2 residents. So those permits. So we believe, and we can't test this until this first rollout happens, we should be able to apply logic where it's able to look and see if they are a resident, and if so, we should get together and talk about what kind of mechanisms we want in place prior to a $50 fee, so that they're not getting unlimited free parking without paying. But it should open up that opportunity for us to sit down and talk about how to best design how that would work so that we can make that simpler for them if we choose to. That's really all I have for that, but I think it's a good update. And then for parking data, year-to-date, we saw the request for some information. Year-to-date, the parking system has had 759,000 transactions. We should get very close to 800,000 for the year. And you can see a heat map here for when most of them are processed, or at least how frequently they are at different times during the week. And then for the residential permits, District 1 has 846 active subscriptions. District 2 is at 790. And then an update on the Hillman Garage monthly parking. Right now we have 312 total monthly parkers. 130 are allocated to the city employees. And then we have a 404 request wait list. And those are individual requests, not vehicles. Some of them can be for more than one vehicle. And that's all I have.
All right. Alderwoman Nell Charles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two questions. Number one, what is a code? You have on here 200 codes in 2023 and 920.
Sorry, so those are for the Park Shop and Dines. So they are purchased by the business, and then they're able to distribute them to their customers and guests as they come.
toward parking.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a QR code.
Oh, okay. Got it. QR code. Got it. Okay.
My apologies.
Second question, if we brought in the first 10 people that came before us when we first started this effort who complained about the parking system, what would they say today?
All the same.
I was in Annapolis many years ago and came back in May of this year, so that's hard for me to answer. I can reference that I believe it was still the same equipment, and so the gates were stuck all the time, ticket jams, credit card jams, and certainly a lot of employees at the gates, I'm sure was still a challenge until the gates were replaced or removed. So I think it's a better drive-in, drive-out experience. We certainly, as a business model, believe that you should interact with the platform and not be charged, and I think there's a lot of arguments for that, maybe not for here. But we do like to have that interaction, that you're making a transaction and you are parking and using the facility. So I think it's a much better experience, certainly. Volumes, revenues, everything is up. We've parked 800,000 people over the course of this year so far. We get complaints, and you get them as well. I can tell you that if the escalated complaints outside of our appeal mechanisms and things like that that we have in the systems were 50 a month, we're looking at less than 0.01% of them escalate. So I think that we're providing a very good experience for people, even though we do hear feedback that can be negative at times. Overall, the system's working and it's excelling and exceeding expectations.
I would have loved to seen in your report the challenges that we still have. This is a wonderful report, but it's always good to see what the challenges still are, because for those who are tuning in, this is fine, but they still want to be heard as well through this report. So to make it even more complete, I would suggest that we have included in this report the challenges that we still have and how we're rectifying them in real time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alderman Savage?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I guess, so the one slide you said, you talk about removing the $50 overstay for resident. You said it's predetermined via city code. I have not been able to find that. So I'm curious what you mean by that.
So that is for a non-payment. So if you don't pay and you're at a metered space, which the garage operates as, that's the city code fine for non-payment.
So that's not in the code. If it is, please send it to me. What's in the code is in our fee schedule, which is adopted, is an hourly charge up to 1 hour, $3, 2 hours, $6, 3 hours, $11.75, up to 4 hours, $17, 5+ hours, daily max, $23.25. Specifically under Hillman Garage daily rates. This is in our fee schedule. You're going to do a search for Hillman Garage, it'll pop up. So this is what we adopted last budget. So unless you could explain otherwise, I see no indication you have any authority to be charging $50 for an overstay.
Sure, I can send over to you.
And I'm going to ask our city attorney to look into it as well, because I'm really concerned that there's no authority to do it, to do that.
Yep.
So along those lines, why, the whole system just seems a bit inefficient to me. Why have somebody plug in their planned stay duration, and there's the other option, the new one you said they could click if they're not sure, but they still have to kind of give an idea. Again, why do that when you have the license plate readers like SP Plus or Metropolitan, whatever the new name is? You know, they use the system where once you're plugged in, they know when you leave and you arrive and you leave, so they charge you based on usage. So why not just do that? Because then you don't have to have all these other extra screens in your app. It just seems simpler to have rely on your cameras.
So right now, that's not how our platform functions, and the concession agreement itself sort of dictates how we have to operate, and that's how it's.
Okay, I've read through the concession agreement, and I've seen no mention of that.
Okay.
It says in the concession agreement that the parking rates are set by the city, but the concession, what's the term? The concession, the other side basically doesn't have direct say ultimately on what happens. They can have, well, I guess they do have say and input, but ultimately it says in there specifically that's the city council, the city as a whole, sorry. So I guess do you have platforms in other jurisdictions that use the hourly model, which is you pay for what you use?
We do not. We have that start-stop session as an option, but we don't toll is what's often.
So you use the stop-start in every single facility you operate?
How Hillman is set up is how nearly every facility
And-
is run, yes.
So every premium parking facility around the country uses the start-stop?
Yeah. Well, so start-stop is an option to have enabled. You can either have the pay ahead of time, scan the sign, make your payment, or you can enable start-stop. That depends on the client.
Yeah, but the pay ahead is still, you're paying the maximum $50. It's not really, so you're telling me that every single facility you operate as an entity uses that model?
There is an enforcement mechanism, and that's changes in different places. Here, it's $50, that number, how much it is. But yes, everybody scans our signs or uses text pay or phone call, whatever they choose, and they pick an amount of time, and then they can extend it if they choose to, yes.
Well, it would seem to me if our code says that's not allowed, then you're going to have to determine a new software setup.
Understood. We'll take a look at it. I think that
I
some other.
understand, but I did say this last time you were here. If I didn't get an answer on this, I was going to introduce legislation. But it turns out the legislation's already in there. So that's why, send me information you have, because at this point, I think we need to get this sorted out. Because like was mentioned, it's the top complaint that we receive from people.
Sure, and we'll look at that with Marcus and his team, the city attorney and our people. Yeah,
Thank you.
and Amber and Medco.
And just for the record, on January 10th of 2024, Chester Escobar said, "We own the code, and so we can make changes as needed."
Yeah,
I'm just saying. I underlined it in my notes.
no,
So,
I mean, there's no dispute there.
The program code.
yes, the program code, as we were talking about the structure of the garages and the use of 3 different ways to pay and all of that. And he said, "Well, we own the code." I had to look it up because I know he said it. I've continued to say he said it. Do you have other questions? Sorry, I interrupted.
No, that's fine. That's it. Thank you.
I'm just going to reiterate, I appreciate you coming in. I appreciate the data that you've given us. I am still really worried about the fact that Sunday during the church hours is still one of the highest paid portions, because we've talked about that time and time again, that it's supposed to be free parking during those times, but it continues over the last 3 reports that is one of the highest parking events, I guess. That worries me. It worries me that we're not allowing those people that have been told that they can use it for church to park for those and get their free hours. It also worries me that of the 25, 30 calls I get a week, most of them are about parking. And most of them are either about parking in Hillman or the residential parking. And I know that you and Mary are trying to address those, but it's really frustrating when a resident has to go back and forth 2 or 3 times. And I can't even imagine the number that are actually giving up and just paying it and then not coming and parking anymore. So I see that, we're outperforming and things like that, but I don't see how that's sustainable when we're turning away parking and residents all the time. So that's my 2 cents. Like I said, I appreciate you coming and I appreciate the data, but I think that we need to get to a point where we feel better about what's going on in the garage. The city's number one purpose is to be here for the residents and to represent the residents, and I don't feel that we're doing that with this agreement.
Can I interject to correct something or clarify something? The code, that section that you're referring to, the 23 and change, that is for maximum parking fees. That's a different table in the code than the citation fees. So that $50 is in the code in a different table under citation, for citations. That's where that came from.
I understand, but that, I believe that's for parking spots on the street. That's not for garage parking spots necessarily.
There's a number of different parking related violations and fees. I think the one that you were referencing was the Hillman garage table, and I just wanted to clarify
Yeah.
that was for not for violations or citations. That's just for a parking fee. So I just wanted to clarify that.
No, it's important to know. I mean, because I think they're thinking when you overstay your planned time, then they're considering that a parking violation that you get charged for. So that's the question of whether or not that's really authorized or not. I mean, I haven't found it in the concession agreement yet. All you see is page 15 of it. It talks about concessionaires shall have no right to adjust parking rates. City in its discretion may adjust parking rates. Now, the question is, where does the fine fit into this concession agreement?
Yes.
And when it should be charged, because the code,
It's a long
Doesn't seem to be
agreement, and
clear.
so the Office of Law is looking at it to get more info, but I just wanted to clarify that one.
oh, I understand, it's 986 pages, it's very long.
900?
Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
I'll just note that we are operating as we perceive and understand or have been directed to. So I'm open to discussion. Feel free to call me, email me, whatever. Happy to sit down, talk about things, better ways, different ways, whatever it may be.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I mean, it predates you, but I know, I think both of us, myself, I know for certain, have been saying this for well over a year as far as the direction we want to go. And it keeps getting pushed off and pushed off. So that's why we're at the point we are, trying to figure out what actually needs to get done to make it happen one way or another. Because I think you have clear consensus on the council, and if we need to adopt it, I'm quite certain we could get it passed, is that we don't like this model, period. So how we get there, if you want to do it voluntarily, that'd be ideal.
Happy to work and talk through it, absolutely.
Thank you. Any further questions?
No further questions, thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Moving right along. Next up, we have legislation O2324, parking and towing regulations, purpose of eliminating the requirement that towing companies be within the city. Are you all familiar with
Yes.
this legislation?
No comments.
No comments, no questions?
No comments or questions?
Is there a motion for a favorable recommendation to the council?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, so we'll give that a favorable recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is O2824, the Police Department Property and Contraband Disposal. Are there any comments or questions?
No, unless Alderman Savage wants to make one about the amendment.
I think we're all on the same page. I can
Yeah,
explain
I
it
didn't know
if you
for
want
the
for the
listening
record.
audience if you
Do you want to
wanted
explain
to.
it for the record?
Sure.
So the one amendment that's going to be introduced, it would simply allow the police department to donate the confiscated bikes to nonprofits in the area for area residents who are in need.
Do we have data on how many bikes that I'm guessing they're bikes that are either abandoned or that they've taken from somebody that's been caught stealing bikes?
Yeah.
Do we have any data on that?
No, I don't.
No, I don't have anything, although I've seen it before when they used to fill a whole corner of the garage, so you can be talking about many dozen
I'm sure.
sub bikes, I think.
Yeah.
Is there a motion for a favorable recommendation of O2824 to the council?
So moved,
As amended?
as amended.
As amended, sorry.
Okay.
Oh.
Like-
Favorable recommendation to move the amendment forward.
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right, and is there a motion for a favorable recommendation for O2824 as amended be forwarded to the council?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anything for the good of the order?
Not unless you have something.
No, ma'am.
No, I have a screaming headache.
Oh, no.
Do you?
I do.
Oh, no.
All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second, all in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Right,
All right.
meeting adjourned.
All right.